The Mecklenburg County election debates are a service of WTVI, Mecklenburg County, and the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The views and opinions expressed in these debates are those of the candidates and do not necessarily represent the views of WTVI, its management, Mecklenburg County, or the League of Women Voters.
PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters present Election Debate 2016.
Hello, I'm Jeff Bark with PBS Charlotte, and welcome to the 2016 general election debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. During the next 20 minutes, you'll hear from the two candidates competing in the NC House of Representatives District 88 race. Questions for today's debate were prepared by the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. And candidates, I'll call on you one at a time, and you will have 30 seconds to respond. If you would like to challenge your opponent, raise your yellow card. You'll have 30 seconds to respond. Each candidate has 3 challenges during this debate, and you'll be allowed to make a 30-second closing statement. And now let's meet the two candidates for NC House of Representatives District 88, Democrat Mary Belk and Republican Bryan. Glad to have you both here with us today. Our very first question is, does the legislature have any role to play in diffusing situations like the recent protest and racial tension in Charlotte? Why or why not? A 30-second response, and we begin with Mary Belk.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for providing this forum for us, and also for Jeff and Rob being here. Yes, I do believe that we do. What we can do is we can help facilitate better training for our police officers. This was a difficult situation, and we have to start rebuilding relationships and trust. We ask our police officers to do a very difficult job going into situations like this. There's also a lot of frustration in the community, and that's why we see what we see. So I would say yes, for community policing, we need to start that again. We also need training that we can go in and they can for de-escalation. Okay, thank you.
Bryan, your response.
Thanks as well, Jeff and Mary, for this time. Watching this issue unfold in Charlotte has been interesting and sometimes scary and sometimes hopeful. And as a parent with a child who's African American, my wife and I have had conversations about what does it look like to make sure folks across the community feel good about our police and feel good about what's happening in our community. And my hope is, I think, moving to things like community policing and having the legislature have an active role even in what happened with sending the National Guard down was appropriate in this situation.
Thank you, Rob. Our next question is, where do you stand on House Bill 972 enacted by the legislature to prohibit release of body cam videos without a court order? Rob, we go back to you, and we're looking again at 30-second responses, please.
Thanks. I think the House bill balanced competing interests, which is an important thing to do. Our police officers and others involved in that process, if some of that footage is just automatically released as a public record with no process involved, I think that can create problems. So from my perspective, I think making sure there is a process that goes through the courts to make sure we actually release those records when appropriate, I think that's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Again, the question is, where do you stand on House Bill 972 enacted by the legislature to prohibit release of body cam videos without a court order? Mary Belk, your response.
I think that 972 was not a law that should have been enacted. I have told my children, and I've said that transparency or getting something in front of something, dealing with it as difficult as it may be, is the best course of action. Yeah, we do have a process, and I think we can do that, but I think transparency every single time, let's deal with it, and let's let the local people who know what's going on in their community make that decision. I think that the chief of police and the people in that community are better prepared to do that.
All right, and we want to ask a little bit of a follow-up question. Do you believe police should be required to turn on their cameras when responding to an incident? Rob, we'll go to you first.
I think the answer is probably generally yes. I would want to actually talk to a chief of police about that and think through if there's scenarios where I haven't been involved in sort of looking at body cams and what they do. I think generally the answer is they should be turned on, and I think part of the reason you actually want some process is because there's some benefit to having them turned on, but you also want to make sure with access to that information that we utilize it properly.
Thank you. Mary Belk, your response?
I think they should be turned on, and I believe that there is a process that they do that local communities go through. I know that we've had body cams for a long time and all across the country and in this state and in Charlotte, and I support doing that. I think that's a protection not only for the public, but actually for the police officer.
All right. Our next question is, even though the North Carolina Constitution gives the legislature the power to overrule local ordinances, are they abusing that power with recent actions like House Bill 2? Please explain your response. Again, 30 seconds. We go to Mary Belk.
Absolutely. Charlotte made a decision, and it was a thoughtful decision, and it took place over a year, making the decision to have protections for all of its citizens against discrimination. I think that HB 2, a job killer, by the way, does nothing but discriminate, and I think it was hastily thought out. It did not incorporate some of the people that are the stakeholders in were directly affected. This bill was conceived and written and signed within 12 hours. We have lost many jobs from it. I think this was an overreach, and local government knows best how to deal with their constituents.
Thank you. Bryan, your response. Question is, even though North Carolina Constitution gives the legislature the power to overrule local ordinances, are they abusing that power with recent actions like House Bill 2?
First, I'd say more than it gives them the power, the localities, we're not a home rule state, we're a Dillon rule state, meaning all the power that the localities have is given to it by the state. And cities that are actually, frankly, probably much more socially liberal than Charlotte, like Asheville, actually looked at provisions like this and didn't do it on advice of their legal counsel because they knew it wasn't constitutional. And so I think the first problem is someone who takes an oath to uphold the North Carolina Constitution is that you don't want to allow unconstitutional things to happen at local levels. I think we can have a conversation about what we ought to allow localities to do, and that's one of the things we tried to set up in our process, but we're thwarted in that effort.
All right, and I think we have a challenge coming from Mary Belk.
We do. No law should discriminate against citizens of this state, and that's what HB 2 did. The longer we keep this bill on the books, the more job killing it's going to happen. We have lost countless jobs, we have lost millions of dollars in business, and we have a bill on record that discriminates against citizens of the state. It's wrong. The longer it stays on, the more harm it is going to do for our state. We need to stop it. It needs to be repealed immediately.
All right, thank you. We have a challenge from Bryan.
Yeah, the problem is HB 2 doesn't discriminate against anyone. Businesses are free to enact whatever policies they want to enact. And in fact, I'd like to, ask my opponent, in light of this, you think about what Charlotte did, and I think there's real problems with what they did, but what would be allowed from that in a YMCA locker room, if you have an open locker room, is that someone who is anatomically, male could be walking around in a female's locker room, and I think that is problematic, and I think it needed to be addressed. I have 4 daughters, and I think I talked to all of them, and they said, hey, this isn't right.
All right. Our next question is, would you support an independent commission redistricting legislative and congressional districts? Why or why not? Rob, we begin with you first.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. I have actually sponsored a bill for independent redistricting. I've supported it since I've been in. In a district like the one we're in, we actually have a competitive district, unlike many others. So it's not something that is a problem in our particular district, but certainly across the state, I think it's a good idea.
Mary Belk, your response?
Absolutely. I think we need to take politics out of redistricting. I think what we do when we do that, and Rob's right, not necessarily in District 88, but in other districts where people are actually disenfranchised because of how blue or red it is. I think that voters need to be able to pick their representatives. Representatives shouldn't pick their voters.
All right. Our next question is, citizens demand tax cuts, but also demand better education, health care, roads, technology improvements, etc. How do you balance these conflicting demands? Mary, we go back to you.
I think, here again, I think what we have to do, we have to define what our priorities are. And our priorities in North Carolina are good education, trying to get 21st century jobs that pay living wages, and also quality health care so that our citizens can learn, because you can't learn if you're ill. And I think what we do is we prioritize. Where are we spending this money? How are we spending it? And I think if we do that and make sure that any of the programs that we do have do what they're supposed to do, and if they don't, then we need to eliminate them and move that money where we think it's important.
Bryan, your response?
I think the primary concern is making sure we have a growing economy, and I think to do that, you make sure you've got competitive tax rates, and you make sure you have certainty in the market, and really a modernized system of doing effectively what we're supposed to do. I think when you create the right environment, the great thing that happens is you create economic growth, which provides the funds you need, which is exactly what you've seen over the last 4 years, while we've had surpluses and while we have a huge rainy day fund right now.
Our next question is, does it make sense not to expand Medicaid when North Carolina loses federal tax dollars, health insurance coverage for more people, and more jobs in the health industry? Explain your position. Mary Belk?
It absolutely makes no sense. This legislature, with Pat McCrory at the top, decided not to have a fully funded expansion of Medicaid. That would have covered 500,000 of our citizens. It also would have created up to 43,000 jobs. What we in SF have done is we have taken North Carolina taxpayer money and we are paying for other states' health care. Also, because of that, what we have done is we have put the burden on taxpayers, because we end up paying for those people who do not have doctors and have to go to emergency rooms because their health has become more acute. That's passed on to taxpayers, and we end up paying that.
Thank you. Bryan, your response?
I'm open on Medicaid expansion. I think it's been I think one of the things we have to realize is the money's not free. So even when we say it's free, we have $19.5 trillion in debt, which is a huge national problem. I think that we can do a more responsible Medicaid expansion where we put some other parameters on it. I mean, most of the people we're talking about, it's actually over 271,000 have actually been covered. So you're talking about closer to 200,000 maybe remaining uncovered. They're mostly able-bodied adults without children. And so, I think we are prioritizing rightly who needs the coverage. I think we can look at expansion as long as we put the right parameters around it.
Thank you. Our next question is, would you reinstate the North Carolina refundable earned income tax credit to give working families a tax break and thus a boost to the local economy? Why or why not? Rob, we begin with you.
I think under the existing tax structure, it's actually not necessary. I'll be the first to tell you I'm all for making sure we want to encourage work and working families, and so the general concept of the earned income tax credit is fine. But I think that we keep increasing the standard deduction for folks in such a way that it's really unnecessary now. We have a really large number of about 17,500, which is up from originally 6,000, which is all tax-free. And I don't think you want to actually necessarily give back more money if someone's not paid anything, actually.
Thank you. Mary Belk, your response?
I do. I think we should. I think we've put an undue burden on our families. We've taken away their ability for this earned income. We've also taken away their ability to get a tax credit for planning for a college fund for their children. We've also added taxes for labor services that we didn't have to do before. This all hits working families in North Carolina, and I think they are being taxed unfairly. So this is one of those things that I think we should reinstate, definitely.
What kind of state plan is needed to ensure water quality and supply in the long term, considering recent coal ash spills, droughts, flooding, conflicting regulations, etc.? Again, what kind of state plan is needed to ensure water quality and supply in the long term? Mary Belk, we begin with you.
Okay. North Carolina is one of the most beautiful states in this country. It is one of our biggest assets. Water quality is a basis for life, and I think what we have to do is we have to have stringent enough and follow what the rules that we have, the laws we have, and enforce them for polluters. We need to hold them accountable. We need to make sure that if they do pollute, that they are charged to clean that up, and they cannot, in the case of the coal ash spills, pass that on to the taxpayers of this state. We have to have a plan that makes sure that our water stays safe.
Rob Bryan?
Thanks, Jeff. We've done a number of things, including, I think, in the past sessions, putting about $10 million new dollars towards water and sewer, wastewater treatment. I actually sponsored a bill that would require lead testing in schools, which is making sure our kids' drinking water is safe. We've got a lot of older schools that have piping and other issues, and so I think hopefully everyone in the state having clean water is important to them. We also had the Whitewater Center issue, and I actually sponsored an amendment to try to create an immediate shutdown of that and looking at making sure we have safe water as people go out and recreate.
Our last question is, who do you support for president? Mary Belk, we begin with you.
Like so many women and mothers of daughters, I was appalled at the tape that surfaced this past week. It was, I wish I could say that it was surprising. It wasn't. It was shocking, and it was very much in dismay. It shows to the caliber and the temperament of Donald Trump. There is no way, as a woman and as a mother of daughters, that I could, nor can I anticipate anyone that could support him. I am going to be voting for Hillary Clinton.
Thank you. Rob Bryan, your response?
What a year. I guess, as one of my number of my friends has said, they don't really feel like they have a good option this year. And unfortunately, I might agree with that. When I look at the recent comments made, I'm trying to take those into account in my own decision. I think they were made a long time ago, and I think, unfortunately, in the other candidate, you have a person who is, whose husband was sleeping with an intern, and not, and who didn't think he should be removed for that. So
okay, you're out of time, but who are you supporting?
I'm supporting Donald Trump at this point.
Thank you. Okay, once again, okay, it's one challenge left?
Yes. Hillary Clinton is the person who is running for President of the United States. To say that this is so long ago that it should not count is really outrageous. It's just a compilation. It's one of the latest things where how he treats women, how he disrespects women, and how he acts, not just talking about it, but his actions. I think it's despicable. I think it's wrong that our governor, that our representative is supporting somebody like that. I think Hillary Clinton is the one running for office, and she is qualified to be the president of this country.
All right, thank you. And we have a challenge from Rob Bryan.
Yeah, I don't think she's qualified. And I think everything that, effectively what she's done when Bill Clinton's time in office in the enabling is unfortunately all too similar. She does a much better job of, I think, not highlighting that. I think we have two very problematic candidates. And, again, when I say at this point, my comment is to say, I'm watching the debates and process just like everyone else.
All right. And we're almost out of time. So again, I want to remind you, you have 30 seconds each for closing statements, and we begin with Mary Belk.
Thank you. I'm running for office in order to restore our record and our reputation as a beacon of the New South and as a leader in education, in attracting businesses. We have gotten way off course in this city and in this state, and it is because of the divisive social agenda of Pat McCrory, of this legislature, and of my opponent. I want to go to Raleigh to make sure that we focus on what is important, and that's our children, education, attracting 21st century jobs, and making sure we have quality health care. I am Mary Belk. I am running for House District 88, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Rob Bryan, your statement, please.
Thanks. As a representative, I have fought over the past 4 years for lower taxes and for an environment that creates economic growth. And that's exactly what we've done. We have led the nation, creating almost $4 billion in additional growth. As a former teacher, I have led the fight in raising teacher pay. It's the highest it's ever been in North Carolina. We had the highest teacher pay in the nation last year. I'm proud of that record. We're doing a great job, and we need to continue doing the things we're doing to lead us to the 21st century. Vote Rob Bryan for State House.
Thank you. Once again, thanks to Democrat Mary Belk and Republican Rob Bryan, who are candidates in the North Carolina House of Representatives District 88 race. Again, thanks for taking part. You can find more information about the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg at goleaguego.org. And for more information about the candidates, you can go to vote411.org. I'm Jeff Rivenbark for all of us at PBS Charlotte. We appreciate you watching, and please get out to vote on Tuesday, November the 8th.